Hey everyone, Perry Carter here, talking fake baseball. Today's video, we're going to be talking about trade value. So in previous videos, we talked about how to evaluate hitters, how to evaluate pitchers. Um, Over the course of the league, as you're building a team, you may get some trade offers. You may want to offer people some trades. So what are these players worth, really? So I put together a kind of a quick and dirty way to evaluate your assets. What are the most important parts of your team? And I put a little point system uh, next to it so you can get an idea of what you should expect to receive for a particular asset. So the most important thing that your team can have is an ace starting pitcher. So this would be a starting pitcher with good stuff, as we talked about in my video. So, maybe a couple mid to upper 90s in kind of the big four stats and enough endurance to be a starting pitcher. you know this, and not just a barely good enough to be a starting pitcher. This is a starting pitcher that can comfortably go pitch 3 games in a 7-game series, pitching games 1, 4, and 7. This type of asset is just really, really invaluable. You're not going to go far in the playoffs if you don't have one of these. um, so every team should want one. It'd be great if you could have 2 or 3 of these, but in reality, these are hard to come by assets, and they're really, really valuable. Next is a top 3 draft pick. I have that as 125 points, and really the only reason it's worth that much is because you have a chance of getting an A starting pitcher. And like I said, that's by far the most um, valuable position that you could, or type of player that you could have. Number 3 is this elite 2-way position player. This is a player who is really, really good offensively, but also has a lot of range and can play an important defensive position really well. So this would be like your rangy all-star center fielders, shortstops, second baseman, maybe even a third baseman if they're that good of a hitter. So these elite 2-way position players are the next most valuable asset that you can have on your team. You're going to want to collect as many of these as you can. Then you have a top 10 draft pick. After that, what I put is a quality starting pitcher. So this would be somebody who maybe they have a lot of endurance, but their stuff isn't quite elite, or a pitcher that has really elite stuff, but their endurance is just not quite good enough to you know be a great starting pitcher that could pitch, say, 3 games in a 7-game series. Maybe you're going to have to manage their CFAT all game long, so they're not going to be able to get as many starts, and then their innings per start aren't that great. So those type of pitchers, I would consider quality starting pitchers. Those also you're going to need to want to have a lot of those on your team to put in your rotation. So pretty value at 75 points. Now, as you noticed, 75 points is like 2 good pitchers for 1 elite pitcher. That is, I think, fair trade value, but probably not one that you're ever going to want to pull the trigger. Like you're those A starting pitchers you're going to want to hold on to. But if you're in a position where you want to win now, and you really just don't have enough pitchers, for rotation, 2 good ones for 1 really good one, it's something you may want to consider. But maybe don't make that trade all the time if you're the one holding the ace. Maybe ask for some more assets if you're in the market to do a trade like that for a lot of players in exchange for one. After that, I put elite one-dimensional players. These would be your stud DHs. Maybe it's a defensive cutie on the shortstop, like a really high-range shortstop. I put them at 70 points. Obviously good assets, but a little bit easier to come by. Then we have our mid and late first-round picks. These, your A starting pitchers are gone by then, so you're gonna get what's left over, and a lot of times, you may get a good position player. It's really a luck of the draw, and I have these points based on, an unknown draft list. If the draft list comes out and you see exactly what's on there, and you're picking maybe 16 and you see 17 draftable good players, then maybe you could value these a little bit higher just because you know what you're going to get. Whereas before the season, it's a bit of a crapshoot. Some of these really shallow draft pools of players, they just don't have enough. Um, they just really don't have enough for these late first round picks and second round picks to really be worth anything. Like it's very rare that you can get a really good player in the second round. That's why I have the that assets in the second round is 20 points. At number 9, I have elite relief pitchers. So you have like amazing stuff, but there's like no chance that they could be a good starter. Depending on your need, like maybe regardless of how bad their EN is, you're going to want to put them in your rotation anyway. Again, you're going to have to manage their CFAT all year, or you could put them as a closer or just some kind of middle reliever. If they have elite stuff, it's going to help your team. It's just not going to help your team nearly as much as a starting pitcher would. They just don't have enough innings. And number 10, quality starting position players. This is kind of a wide range. They could be, pretty decent hitters and just okay defensively, or they could be, good defensively, just okay hitters. These are players that are good enough to be on your starting lineup, but not, not good enough to really be a difference maker. So these guys, these kind of, you know, okay position players, they're kind of a dime a dozen. You can find a lot of them. Sometimes you pick them up off the free agent wire. Sometimes people are getting rid of them. When they at the beginning of the season, for example, everyone's trying to get under allocations. They let all their pretty decent veterans go. You can pick them up on the cheap. So um, wouldn't worry about trading for these guys too often. That's why I have the points real low. But if you have a hole on the team and it's maybe the difference of having a mediocre team to a good team to really plug that one glaring hole in your lineup, then by all means, see if you could trade for one of these players. So next is considerations, right? So that's a pretty general rule for how I value assets, but you're going to have to consider the age of the player as well. Obviously, the younger the player is, the more years they have left to play where they're still going to be elite, or their actuals are going to be close to their potentials. So, age of the player factors in very heavily when making these moves. And like I was saying, veterans, you can often get for dirt cheap because as people are trying to get their front office allocations, um, they're going to be making hard decisions about cutting veterans that maybe still have some life in order to hit their front office allocation targets. And you might want to do that. Like bullet point number 3 here is the salary needed to hit your front office allocations. In these low cap leagues, you don't want your, maybe you need some scouting. Maybe you want to make sure that your run continues, so you have your player development, or you have a lot of guys in low minors that you're trying to develop. Some of these front office allocation targets are really, really important. So you may need to drop some, or trade away some of these veterans. But the problem is, so many people are trying to trade away their veterans that veterans are almost, almost worthless, right? If they have some experience and they're getting old, they may not have so many years left. You're really not going to get much for your veterans usually. But everyone's always trying to rebuild and pick some prospects. So you could, be on the flip side of that and trade away all your second round picks and late first round picks for some pretty good veterans. But then you have to worry about your front office allocation. So it's kind of a balance. Just know that the younger a player is, especially if they have zero experience, these players are going to be really, really valuable. Consider your window of opportunity for winning. So, if your team sucks, but you have a really good, player or two, it really does make sense to trade that player away to try and get, future assets, whether it's picks or prospects. Or if you have a decent team and, you're just not, you're making the playoffs, but you're maybe losing in the playoffs, or your run differential is maybe 4th in the league, you're making the playoffs, but you're not quite that elite team. consider trying to trade for some of these veterans to put yourself over the hump, because I think you'll find that it's sometimes not that hard to make trades. And I would recommend too, if you have a trade that you're thinking about doing and it gives you neutral value, like it's not helping you but it's not hurting you, I would recommend to consider it anyway in order to build your trade relationships with the other owners, because trades can be mutually beneficial. And the more that you trade, so if you trade away the players when your window of opportunity is not good, and then you trade for the players when you have your window of opportunity for winning, it's a huge, huge benefit for your team. So, when you're trading with your trade partners, you can make mutually beneficial trades. And if you have a lot of trade at this pool of trade partners making mutually beneficial trades constantly, it's going to give you a huge advantage over the teams that just sit there and don't trade. So I would recommend making those trades, even if it's neutral value, for you to build those trade relationships, because it's really going to help you in the long run. And then scouting. Um, if you don't have any scouting, so your front office allocation, so you're making a run, right? You're making a run for the postseason. You traded for some veterans, and you didn't have enough front office allocation money to put any money into scouting. You might as well trade your draft picks away, because it's going to be really hard to do zero scouting. You don't really know what you're getting at that point. So you might as well just trade for some veteran assets, or maybe draft picks at a future date where you may have some some scouting allocation money. So anyway, that's my video. That's how I look at trades. So if you have your own system for trades, then definitely give me your feedback if it differs from mine. But I think if you stick to this, you'll at least not be getting trade raped. And the goal is to not get trade raped, and don't trade rape anybody. Make mutually beneficial trades, and I think you'll have a good time. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Let me know if there's any videos that you would like to see in the future, which topics you'd like me to cover, and I'll see if I can get to it. All right, take it easy, everyone.